Governor Tim Pawlenty, tell me in a minute or less who you are, and why don't we know who you are?
Well, who I am in this, I'm running for president, or considering running for this reason. The country's in trouble. I think I can fix it. If you're running for president, people want to know who are you. What do you have as a vision for the country? Why do you believe what you say you're going to do? I grew up in a meatpacking town. First one in my family to go to college. Dad, for a chunk of his life, was a truck driver. My mom was a homemaker. She died when I was young. My dad lost his job for a while not long after that. I was a criminal prosecutor for a while. I was the governor of the state of Minnesota for 8 years, and we took a liberal state and turned it in a conservative direction big time. And just to close, there were 4 governors in the country that got an A grade from the Cato Institute. I was one of the 4, and the other 3 aren't running for president.
Mitt Romney, also a governor of a blue state running for president. Is he your strongest opponent right now?
Well, I think Mitt, all these folks who are running or potentially running are my friends. Mitt's going to start out as the front runner. He ran last time. He's got name ID. He's got access to a lot of resources, so I think he's going to be a formidable candidate. But there's a lot of space beyond Mitt for somebody in this race to contest successfully for the nomination.
What's the one thing you bring to the table that no other candidate brings?
Well, I've got a blue-collar background and a conservative record, and the rhetoric and the record match up pretty well. And I got a record of getting stuff done, not just talking about it.
Do birthers worry you?
No, I wasn't one who questioned Barack Obama's birth certificate. I mean, there was no actual evidence to suggest that he wasn't born in the United States. But nonetheless, it was a little interesting that President Obama wouldn't produce the birth certificate or wouldn't authorize it. But, we need everybody, so it's not about throwing people overboard. It's about trying to bring people in and grow the coalition and govern and get this country back on track. Governor
Tim Pawlenty, former governor of the state of Minnesota. You're president tomorrow. What do you do with regard to Afghanistan? Do you bring the troops home?
Well, I've been to Afghanistan 3 times, most recently last fall. I've been to Iraq 5 times. I've been all over the Middle East for many other reasons on other occasions. Our mission in Afghanistan at this point is to make sure that individuals and groups that want to do the United States harm our people or our security interests do not reform and reoperationalize in Afghanistan. So we need to keep enough capacity either in Afghanistan or nearby to identify and defeat that threat if it rematerializes. And in the meantime, hope that the Afghan security forces can do some or all of that on their own. That doesn't mean we stay there forever and rebuild their country, but it does mean we've given a lot of treasure and loss of life and commitment to get to this point. And I want to make sure that as we draw down, and we should, that we don't do it just arbitrarily or accordance to some arbitrary deadline, but accordance to the mission that I just defined a minute ago.
Every Muslim's not a terrorist, but it sure does seem to be the case that almost every terrorist in America is a Muslim. How do we address the fact that radicalized Muslims make up a larger percentage of the population than it seems to be the case politicians are willing to admit? We are groping 6-year-old girls at the airport, and yet Muslim terrorists are getting on our planes because we don't want to offend CARE. How do we deal with that?
Well, a number of things. First of all, let's call it what it is. It is a war on terror. Let's call it by name, and then let's not mince words about what's going on. It is not all of Islam, but within Islam there is a subgroup or a sub-percentage of Muslims who believe it's okay to radicalize and to become radical jihadists and kill in the name of their religion. And that is not a fabrication. That's not politically incorrect. That's a fact. And so let's not be Pollyannish about it. Let's be clear-eyed about it, and let's make sure that we're forward-leaning and aggressive in identifying any threats and defeating them before they materialize. And then on your point, as it relates to screening, it's okay, in my view, to proportionally scale up or scale down the screening based on the proportionality of the threat. And all terrorists are not looking the same or acting the same. This one gentleman who now is in Yemen was born in the United States, one of the leading advocates of terror in the world. Nonetheless, it's okay to say we're going to give disproportionate attention to individuals or groups who represent a disproportionate threat. Now, you want to do that in an appropriate manner, but I think that's an appropriate way to calibrate it.
Does the word profile make you uncomfortable as it relates to Muslim travelers?
No, but let's also add that, it's not going to be the case in the future that all terrorists, for example, are from Yemen or the Middle East. I'm going to give you an example. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, we have 85,000 Somalis. We got 1 in 3 Somalis in the country in little old Minneapolis, Minnesota. We just had 20 people indicted not long ago under federal indictment because they were recruited to go over to Somalia and fight in the war over there, which involves, by the way, Al-Shabaab, which is a Al-Qaeda-aligned group. And so if you said, well, we're just going to profile for Yemenis, or we're going to profile for Saudis, or we're going to profile for Pakistanis, or we're going to profile for Syrians, this is more complicated than let's just profile for, a certain particular group.
Governor Tim Pawlenty, former governor of the state of Minnesota, on what issue are you the most conservative candidate in the field?
Well, I think looking at the field, frankly, I'm probably the most conservative of the folks who actually have a realistic shot of getting elected, both in terms of the nomination and the primary. So, the old adage is let's nominate the person who's the most conservative who can still get elected. I'm that person. I don't think anybody's going to be able to match my record on a number of fronts. But, for example, in Minnesota, we took the spending curve, bent it hard. We cut taxes during my time during 8 years as governor. I did pension reform for public employees before it was cool and popular in a tough environment. I had a first government shutdown in a 150-year history of my state. I set a record for vetoes in a single season. I allotted more money out of the budget using executive powers than all the other governors combined. So let me be real blunt with you and just tell you this. If you listen to most of the Republican candidates, they're going to say many of the same things on taxes, spending, school choice, private market health care, being tough on terrorism, drilling for energy and Americanizing our energy sources. So I don't think the main question is going to be just what are the policy positions, because there's going to be a lot of overlap. I think the real question is, based on who this person is and their life story and their record, are they really going to do what they say they're going to do? Do they have the fortitude as a leader and as a person to actually get this stuff done? Because any jackal can flap their jaw and give a speech or offer a failed amendment in Congress. The real question is, can you actually get this stuff done? And in a tough state in Minnesota, I did.
You're a former governor, and yet you seem to say with some pride that there was a shutdown on your watch. Is that necessary on occasion to show the left you mean it?
It's been my experience that many politicians, not all of them, are like running water. They go to the point of least resistance. And so if you're going to be a leader...
Are you quoting Lao Tzu on me?
No, I'm making that up.
Over government shutdown?
But you got to put up points of resistance. And so lines in the sand or points of resistance give politicians more courage. They mostly make bold and courageous decisions when their back's up against the wall. So you don't want to invite a government shutdown, but sometimes over matters of principle, in my cases it was taxes and spending and related issues, we had to get to that point.
Have you ever punched anyone in the face or been punched in the face?
Yes.
By?
I used to play hockey, and I've been in fights.
You have all your teeth?
Yeah, but they're crooked. You ever been punched in the face?
Oh, I'm the youngest boy of a slew of them, trust me.
Yeah, I'm not talking about brothers now. You ever gotten in a fight with a stranger?
Not on a hockey court. Yeah, and I don't think I ever won.
Yeah, you ever been in a bar fight?
No, I haven't. I've run my mouth and been close, but never actually been
see, that's the thing. I always tell people. They always say, well, so-and-so is louder or whatever. It's been my experience that most people who are the loudest aren't usually the toughest. I mean, they're flapping their jaw because they're making up for something else.
It's been my experience that politicians take too long to answer questions, and you get right to it. And I appreciate that very much. We are talking to Governor Tim Pawlenty, former governor of the state of Minnesota. I have about 30 seconds. A number of listeners asked me to get an answer from you on the fair tax and the flat tax. You have 20 seconds.
I love the flat tax. Hope we can get there. It's a good idea. We'd have to make some modifications to it, I think, to get it through. The fair tax bothers me for this reason. I like it as a concept. However, the income tax is still in the U.S. Constitution. So the fair tax has a number of great attractive features to it. But if you're not able to amend the U.S. Constitution and get rid of the income tax, you're going to end up with both, and I don't like that scenario.